Um, uh, Good morning. Thank you very much for that excellent introduction. When you have a long list of things said about you, it generally reflects more on how old you are rather than what you've done. So don't take it all that seriously. I want to just give, talk about a simple message before I proceed further with my actual talk. That is, we have certain built-in assumptions about education. We believe that inside the school, education has to be unidirectional. It goes from the teacher to the students. The students listen, and then they're examined on whatever it is the teacher said, and then they're certified. That system actually came from the last 200 years of empire. Its purpose is to produce clerks and civil servants. So we need to look at whether we want to continue to do that. Of course, we still need a few clerks, but what clerks do and what civil servants do can be done by a computer quite easily nowadays. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that we talk about computers. You just heard somebody say that we are the masters, the computers are the slaves. I'm not so sure that situation is that way anymore. The important thing to remember is that there's something else other than computers. It's the internet. And when it comes to the internet, I'm not sure who the master is and who the slave. So we need to factor that into education as well. So my work sort of deals with this, and I bumped into it quite accidentally almost 16 or 17 years ago through an experiment which you just heard about. If you go to the next slide. Is there a clicker here? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I forgot to pick that up. So if you look at this is 16 years ago, 1999, and it was in the slums of New Delhi, Kalkaji. And what we were able to show there, through this experiment and through a whole lot of other experiments, is that groups of children left alone with a computer can learn anything by themselves. It might sound strange, but I did experiment after experiment trying to find out the limits, to say, okay, this one they will not be able to do. I still haven't found any. But what are the conditions? Broadband, free access, in public, safe places which are visible to everybody, with unsupervised groups of children. A single child with a single computer in a room somewhere is dangerous. We need to change that. And every educator needs to keep that in mind. It is not one-to-one. This process of learning, so if you take a computer, you put a whole lot of kids around it, you ask them a question. We ask them an interesting question. I'll tell you what the kind of question that might interest a 9-year-old, a group of 9-year-olds. You tell them, why is it that nails on our fingers grow longer and longer and you have to cut them off? Isn't that a wasteful thing? Why does it happen? Why doesn't it just stop by itself? And leave them alone. It's a funny question, but it has a deep answer. In 40 minutes, you'll get evolutionary biology, you'll get cell expression, you'll get a whole lot of things just pop out of nowhere. The free internet, public visibility, groups of children. This process can be helped with admiration. Not with discipline, but with admiration. If there is a grandmother there who says, "Arey, ye to bahut badhiya kiya. How did you do this?" When I was your age, I used to be an absolute stupid. I never have done this. And the children will go further and further and further. I have experiments to show that. So in 2009, I created what's called the granny cloud. I put in an appeal in the Guardian newspaper in England saying, if you are a British grandmother, if you have broadband and a web camera, then can you give me 1 hour of your time every week for free? In 2 weeks, I got more than 200. Now it's a global thing. I mean, there are many Indians, there are people from America, people from South America, etc. It's a fantastic free resource because these are usually, retired teachers. They miss the children. They're back home somewhere. I'm only asking for an hour a week, and I can beam them using Skype into places where good teachers will not go. So the presence of a friendly mediator can improve self-organized learning. In England, in a city called Gateshead, I created what's called self-organized learning environments, which is that you bring the hole-in-the-wall experiment from India into the classroom. How do you do that? We remove all the furniture from the classroom, put in 4 computers or 5 computers with big screens, put 20 children in. What will happen? Obviously, the children have to form groups because there are 5 computers and there are 20 children. The screens are big. Usually the walls should be of glass so that anybody outside can see what's happening inside. And you let them work on whatever it is that you can interest them in. Once in a while, you admire them. So a soul, as it's called, is broadband, collaboration, and encouragement. That's it. The curriculum can be what you choose. It depends on how you make up your questions. It costs very, very little, and it's very highly effective. The idea started spreading out of England. It spread first into Europe. I started getting calls to describe what it is, then into North America, then into all 5 continents. I've lost track of how many people, how many teachers today are using the soul as a method. They are in tens of thousands. So obviously teachers like it because it achieves the result by itself. Remember, it's not unidirectional delivery. It's about learning. But there is a problem. How do teachers use this method? What teachers tell me in India and elsewhere, that what do we do after 9th standard? Because then there is an examination. An examination where where the internet will be taken away from the children, they'll be put in, they'll be asked to work alone and then solve a question paper. An assessment system that is from 200 years ago. So, what do we do? How do you handle the transition in the 10th standard of your children into a time machine that will send them into the past? And what will happen to them after that? I mean, let's take an example. For example, I think everyone in this room has been taught how to solve a quadratic equation. Do you remember that? And I think it's equally true that none of us ever have had to solve a quadratic equation to live. Okay, so what was it for? So you might say, no, it's a deep understanding of the nature of parabolic equations and so on and so forth, but we got to teach people things that they can use. So you have to test them for it. This is a picture of an office as it was about 150 years ago. Rows and rows of clerks. What do clerks need to know? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Good handwriting, being able to do arithmetic in their minds, and to be able to read and understand instructions. They were taught, like most of us were, for 17 years, not to ask questions and not to be creative. Okay, we were taught that. And, many of us I see, including myself, are still dressed like that. So that's your office 150 years ago. That's the examination hall of today. Do you see what the problem is? We are producing our children for employers who are dead. This is what an office of today looks like. Doesn't it remind you of the hole in the wall? So if this is the office that our children are going to go to, then this is the examination. This is how the examination should look like. So I've been going around from continent to continent asking desperately to governments to say, please allow the internet into the examination hall. It is inconceivable in all continents right now. I haven't succeeded in having even one administrator agree to it. But wherever there are children who listen to my talks, I get applause. You know, if you put the internet in the exam hall, the guy who writes the examination question paper, he has to change his entire approach. If you are a teacher, if you're standing in front of a class and you know that every child has got internet access or is going to have internet access in the exam, your teaching style will change completely. Your curriculum will change completely. It's one administrative decision that can change the entire system. But someone needs to bell the cat. So in 2013, I got a prize, and using that, I built 7 labs to test out how this new kind of a system might work. Here's a quick glimpse of that.
What is the future of learning? Could it be that we are heading towards or maybe in a future where knowing is obsolete? Could it be that we don't need to go to school at all? Could it be that at the point in time when you need to know something, you can find out in 2 minutes? My wish is to build a facility where children go on these intellectual adventures, driven by the big questions which the mediators put in. It's a facility which is practically unmanned. It will be called a school in the cloud.
মানুষ করা দিচ্ছে এখন কিন্তু সেরকম ভাবে আমরা পাচ্ছি কই এখানে যে স্কুল
Good teachers don't go to remote places. The remoter you get, the worse primary education becomes. I don't know how to build a school in the cloud because I've never built one. So I'm trying to figure out a design which, really speaking, belongs to children and is run by children. So that's what's going on. It's a great big experiment. Schools as we know them now, they're outdated.
As soon as I started doing it and seeing the buzz and the enjoyment of the kids, it made me look at my lessons differently and the role of a teacher differently, less talking at the front and more handing it over to the children.
like not made of, but it's like a bread.
I really like it because it's independent and you get to work with your friends.
Korakati may or may not be different from the schools of England, so that's what we are going to look for. The idea is to have a complete glass front to a building here and a large...
Well, I built them. I built all 7, and they're all operational now. This one's in Killingworth in England. It's up northeastern England. It's got an Xbox inside, so the children don't want to leave school and go home. But if you notice, not all of them are playing the Xbox all the time. They're doing all sorts of other things with the big internet that they have. Kalkaji in New Delhi, India, with a granny cloud on the wall. Newton Aycliffe is a little town in northeastern England again, with another granny on the wall. This is the insides of it. This is Chandrakona in Midnapur district in West Bengal. If you can see right at the back, there is not a granny but a grandfather, this chap with a big beard. He's from Australia. And I don't know what he's doing to the children's accents. And this is Korakati in the Sundarbans, the remotest of the lot. There is no electricity there, there is no healthcare, there is no primary school, there is nothing. So this is a solar-powered facility with a mast that sticks out 50 feet above the ground to catch a signal from somewhere and bring the internet in. That's what it looks like inside. It's full of all sorts of technical problems and all kinds of other problems, parent misconceptions. So I'm sort of struggling through all of that, but there it is. And this is our biggest one. It's in Gocharan, Bengal again. It's a hexagonal structure. It can take 40 children at one time. And there they are. So, we need to rethink the system. I mean, e-learning is a generic term. We can take the E out, because is there any other kind of learning? Isn't all learning e-learning right now? What can we do without the internet? So why don't we find a way to release children into this environment, find the new assessment system, find the new certification system. I know it's going to be hard, but it has to be done. Thank you very much.